Up next, Seeing Red with the Celtics green. 36 years of winning with the legendary winningest coach in NBA history, Red Auerbach, up close. A laughing winner is not uncommon in sports, neither is a snarling loser. But Red Auerbach is a snarling winner. Words from Jim Murray. On one Arnold Jacob Auerbach, nicknamed Red, not because of the color of his hair, said Murray, but from his legendary temper. Red Auerbach, furious, passionate, quite possibly the most influential non-player in the history of the NBA, not just the all-time winningest basketball coach with 938 wins, but truly the architect of the greatest basketball dynasty the sport may ever know. In all, 16 world championships, 9 as coach, 7 as general manager or team president. It's been 25 years since Auerbach left coaching, but his stamp, the approval of the Celtics franchise, is still undeniable. 41 years ago, Celtic owner Walter Brown lured Auerbach to Boston to rescue his troubled franchise. Auerbach's impact was immediate. He doubled the Celtics' wins the first 2 years, then led the team to 3 straight division finals the next 3 seasons. He was the first pro coach to tutor Wilt. His was the first NBA team to draft a black player, Chuck Cooper of Duquesne. He was the first executive to hire a black head coach, Bill Russell, in 1966. He innovated, he improved the game, and it improved him. Today, the NBA with MBA, the new book, Management by Auerbach, with 74-year-old Red Auerbach up close. And here is the new book, Red Auerbach with Ken Dooley, MBA Management by Auerbach. He knows how to manage after all these years. 46, by the way, in the NBA. Good seeing you, my friend.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a look back. We're going to look ahead. We're going to look currently. Let's first take a look back. Dolph Schayes, your old buddy, one of your great rivals, talking about what it was like to play the Celtics, how they hated one another back then. Let's listen to Dolph first, and we'll react to it. The Hall of Famer, Dolph Schayes.
But we actually despise the Celtics and everything about them, and even we wouldn't even talk to them in restaurants, or for some reason or other, the rivalries were very fierce in those days. I mean, and now, of course, you know, Bob Cousy is one of the most wonderful, gifted people I've ever met, and Red is a sweetheart. But in those days, you wonder. We really despised them. We really did. When we played against Red Auerbach, one of my great thrills, one of my great, one of the things I wanted to do, my fantasy, was to push that cigar right down his throat. Somewhere along the way, get 6 points in the last 2 seconds and go, and after he had lit that cigar. That was a fantasy of mine.
Well, there he is, still smoking a cigar. By the way, you get free cigars. Somebody give you the freebies somewhere?
No, I'd buy them.
Okay. I want to ask you about the cigar thing, okay? What about the guy who says, you know what? You couldn't get away with it these days. That's just bad sportsmanship, and on top of everything else, it humiliates the opponents. The opponents have a chance to one-up one of your players, elbowing late in the game. You said that this is for your coach with the cigars, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I got disgusted with college coaches and pro coaches who were on TV.
Right.
They're leading by 30 points and 6 minutes to go, and they're up jumping and coaching and all because they're on TV.
Right.
Hell, the game is over. Sit down and relax. So I used to sit and relax. I said, yeah, relax. Joe Lapchick smoked cigarettes on the bench in those days. So I lit up a cigar. And fortunately, or unfortunately, it was charismatic. Everybody picked it up.
You couldn't get away with it?
But it wasn't.
Couldn't get away with it now. Never.
You can get away with it, except they have no coaching, no smoking in the building. That's all right.
Bob Cousy, your old buddy. By the way, for those who might know this, Mr. Auerbach didn't think Cousy was a player at all.
No.
Was lamenting the day that you had gotten him. You felt that you were unlucky in getting Cousy out of the dispersal trap.
Well, let me put it this way. If you were in my position, and you have Andy Phillip, one of the Illinois Whiz Kids, great defensive player, 2 inches bigger than Bob. He was a proven damn good player in the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer, too. Then you had Max Zazowski, who practically led the league in scoring. Who would you want to take? A guy who was unproven or a proven great?
Basically, though, you didn't think necessarily had the goods. You ended up getting Andy Phillip anyway a few years later. But anyway, listen to Coos. Coos talking about your style on the bench, coaching, running the show for all those great Celtics teams. Here's Bob Cousy.
Coaches constantly refer, I think, to players that they admire and respect who do it with the least amount of wasted motion. And I could apply that to Arnold's coaching. He knew how to win with the least amount of wasted motion. And in that sense, basketball, I think, more so than any other team sport, allows you to get into overcoaching. And this is what I see both on a college and professional level. Arnold, there was never any overcoaching. He got the job done, as I say, in the simplest and easiest way.
No wasted motion. What does he mean by that?
Well, because the most important thing about coaching is communication.
Right.
It's not what you say, it's what they absorb. So if I could talk to a guy one-on-one and tell him what I want to do, and I want him to do, I don't have to yell and scream and go through all gyrations and so forth and so on. He'd get the job done that way.
But yell and scream you did.
No, I didn't.
Okay, let me
Not to my players.
Not to your players, but to everybody else. Okay.
Not everybody, just the referees.
Earl, yeah. Well, here's one. Here's one. Your old buddy Earl Strumman. We spent some time with Earl at his retirement dinner last year, a couple of years back. Earl talking about particularly one nasty exchange in 1984. You remember it. Earl Strum in the finals in '84 with Red.
Got very nasty. Very nasty. Red is a friend. Believe it or not, Red once said, I can't take too much of referees, and if we got to have a referee, he said, I may as well have you, or I just as soon have you.
But you combated his berating you by calling him Arnold. He hates Arnold, right?
He doesn't particularly care for that name. And Cousy used to call him Arnold all the time when he was trying to get on him. And I remember this, and when I got to the dressing room, and he didn't stop. And I couldn't get out of the way fast enough because it was such a narrow walkway, and we were walking through, and I finally got to the room, and I had had enough, particularly when he referred to me as a eunuch. I stuck my head out. I said, Red, you're showing me all, Arnold, you're showing me all the class I always knew you had. And I quickly got back in the room, and I heard this thump at the door. Here he was outside kicking the door, and all the media people were around. But you know, we've been friends, and I'm sure Red, when he thinks back on that, will admit that he was probably wrong.
What's a 60 at this point? 68.
What do you mean I was probably wrong?
Were you wrong?
Hell no. Right.
It's still, let's 7 years ago is still, but you're 68 years old. What are you doing kicking a door at age 68? What's a man like you?
See, referees have a habit of thinking they're never wrong.
Right.
They never have a bad game. They're never wrong.
We have a tour, by the way, of some pictures of you and some referees over the years, some still pictures. I think this is that Sid or is that Mendy?
No, that's Drucker.
Oh, that's Norm Drucker. Okay. Look how close you get up. They don't get that close. I think that's Sid Borgia.
Sid Borgia, great official.
And you said something nice about an official just now.
He controlled the game.
Right.
When you had Sid Borgia on the road, you had an even chance to win the game.
Is officiating better in the 90s than it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s?
No, it's about the same.
Which is?
I don't think 3 officials did it any good.
Really?
Not really.
Is it possible you could have been wrong once in a while, too, regarding the calls, that maybe you were just trying to...
No, I used to pick my spots. See, people thought that I was up on every call and all that kind of stuff. And the reason that the press and the TV focused on me was because I did not do it that often. See, I would
How many
always...
times did you get tossed, would you say, in your career?
Oh, quite a number of times, but wait a minute. I'd say 80% of the times that I got tossed was a premeditated toss.
You wanted
I wanted to get tossed.
To fire up the players, the fans?
Sure, because, like, for example, if we're playing lousy and nothing's happened, I talk to myself, I'd say, hey, time to go. So I used to get on a referee, I'd say, hey, you keep it up, you'll be good enough for high school. So he'd get mad, you know, and he'd look at me and say, hey, work the ball game. So finally he called a technical foul. Next time he'd come down, I say, you got rabbit ears. That used to drive him crazy. And you're not hustling. That would also drive him crazy. And I say, so he'd look at me. I say, no wonder you can't work the damn game. You're looking at me, the game is out there. I said, so he'd get mad, he's a technical foul.
And you're out.
Now I figure for the same money, the fine, I'd go after him. And why did I do that? I wanted to get the crowd to feel sorry for little old Red, see? So Russell used to grab me, and he'd lift me up, because he never knew when I was going to do it, and he always was afraid I'd hit the referee or something. So he'd grab me, lift me up, and I weigh 185 pounds. So finally, I go out, and I swear to you, about 85% of the times we'd win that ball game. But I never deluded myself into thinking that they won it for dear old Red.
Right.
They wanted to show me they could win it without me.
Yeah, I bet. There's always a great photograph, and we have it, of Red watching from behind the curtain, waiting in the wings after he got tossed. This is the brand new book, though. Red Auerbach, MBA, Management by Auerbach. Some interesting comments upcoming, up close after this. 46 years in professional basketball, Red Auerbach. Wow. Before that, of course, coaching, playing at Roosevelt High School, Washington, D.C. One of his projects, shall we say, ended up being the commissioner of baseball. But when you cut him flat out, you didn't think he could play at all.
No, he couldn't. I asked him to come out, and I watched him for a couple of days. I said, you better do something else.
He ended up doing something else. You also cut Ray Flynn, the mayor of Boston. He was a Celtic tryout?
Well, that was tough.
He was a good player?
He was a good player. He was a bona fide player, damn good. He was probably the last guy cut.
Tell me the story of Billy Green, the player who you had a lot of high hopes for.
Well, you see, in those days, I did it all. I was the coach. I was all my assistants. There were no assistants.
Right.
I had no scouts. If I had a day off, we played Wednesday and Friday. I had a day off Thursday. I'd have practice in the morning, get on a plane, go out, see doubleheader or something. So I went to see this kid play in New York.
Billy Green.
And he hit 12 for 13 shots, 6'8".
Wow.
Moved good. It was really good. So, like I said, I had no staff or anything, so I drafted the kid. It was the last pick. And he comes in. We find out he won't fly.
Won't fly?
Won't fly. So I don't know what they do. So finally we talked to him. Everybody talks to him. Hey, you want to play pro ball? You want to make a living? Blah, 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 blah. We're going to St. Louis. Come on. We get him towards the airport. He breaks away. He said, I can't do it.
Wow.
So he takes a bus and he meets us there.
Takes a bus to St. Louis?
To St. Louis from Boston. Like 23 hours. So he gets there for the game and he says he'll fly home. I said, well, that's it. Same thing happens. We get him to the airport. All of a sudden he disappears. Takes the bus back to Boston.
Wow.
As soon as I saw him, I said, here's your car fare home. See you later.
Yeah, that's a might have been. Wilt, okay, here we go. Now, people don't know this, that Red was one of Wilt's first coaches ever. This Kutcher's upstate New York, I guess it is.
Yeah.
And you said that he just was too stubborn. He wanted to do things his own way, and he wasn't really coachable when you knew him as a young man.
Well, he was a kid that was spoiled.
Eddie Donovan?
No, the guy that spoiled Will was my good friend Eddie Gottlieb.
Gottlieb, I meant, yeah.
Eddie Gottlieb spoiled him where, I don't know, he practiced when he wanted, he lived in New York, he used to meet the team, and if I had a guy like that, it would drive me crazy. And people used to say, what would you do if you had Wilt? I said I couldn't have him under those conditions. Because something would have to give.
We talked about feuds, Wilt and Russ, and they were friends once upon a time, and Wilt maintains still good friends. I asked Wilt...
they're not good.
They're not good friends?
No.
Okay. Well, this is what he thinks they're still good friends. Anyway, this is what
they don't talk. You ever have a good friend you don't talk to?
For 20 years. Wilt talked about what he admired, though, of Bill Russell. I want you to listen to what Wilt said, what he admired most about Bill Russell.
Well, I think that he's been a type of guy early on, like myself. He went out and made statements and stood up for what he believed in the way of racial discrimination and a lot of things that happened during the time that, you know, things just weren't so smooth when we were playing back in 58, 57, and he actually was before I. And he stood up for his beliefs in those ways, and I really like him for that.
Now, when you talk about not so smooth, we're talking about some of the stuff that people didn't talk about then. His home was vandalized, Bill Russell. And this, according to one account, feces smeared on his walls and his furniture. He grew bitter, but he stayed in Boston, and then eventually he left. You had a unique relationship. I think there was one confrontation, or story anyway, in the old book, this is the old book, Winning the Hard Way, where he said you could not possibly understand what it is to be a minority. And you said, wait a minute, I'm a Jew. And you said, yes, but your skin is still white. But then there was a sort of reconciliation when he was named the coach of the Celtics. And these are the great moments.
Well, I named him the coach of the Celtics.
Yes, right. Right. But these are the great moments, the pictures, the two. And then there was this very, I think, poignant moment in the book where he's talking about his relationship and what he thought of you. And this is what Bill Russell said of Red Auerbach. This is from the book, Winning the Hard Way. We could see it, please. There it is. When I took this job, somebody said to me, what do you take it for? You got nothing to gain. You got to follow Red Auerbach. I don't think I'm going to be another Red Auerbach. Who wants to be another Red Auerbach? My name is William Felton Russell. I heard a lot of coaches and a lot of writers around the country say the only thing that made you a great coach was Bill Russell. He's talking to you now, Red. He said, that helped, certainly. Yeah, but that's not what did it. This is Red's team. Red picked every guy here. Now, this is kind of embarrassing, he said, but I'll go so far as say this. I like you, and I'll admit that there aren't many men that I do like, Red. I'll say it once more. I can't imagine ever playing for a greater coach. We'll be friends until one of us dies, and I don't want too many friends either, Red. That must have made you feel pretty good.
Well, we have been friends, and we're still friends. His daughter, you know, is a graduate of Harvard Law School. And Bill Russell, to me, is extremely bright. And all he wanted to do was win. When he would play against Chamberlain, I'll give you a typical example of a game. Russell at the halftime would have 15 points and about 16 rebounds. Chamberlain would have about 10 points and about 12 rebounds or 11 rebounds. Then we'd get way ahead in the third period, and I'd take him out. So at the end of the game, we'd win by 10, 15 points, and the papers in Philadelphia or wherever, they'd say, Celtics beat Philly, Chamberlain outduels Russell.
Right.
He outdueled Russell when Russell was on the bench.
You maintain Russell was the better athlete, the better winner, the better basketball player, but better athlete than Will Chamberlain. No doubt about it.
Russell used to get mad at Chamberlain talking about his exploits in track. Russell was a bona fide track man.
Right. Johnny Mathis had a high jump.
Well, he could have made the Olympics as a high jumper, and he ran the 220 and the 440, you see. So Russell said one time to me, so why don't you set it up, put up $20,000 or whatever, and I'll have him in the decathlon. I'll eat him up.
That would have been something I'd
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing before you start. Chamberlain was a great athlete. Don't ever get me wrong. He was a great athlete, but you ask any of the players in that era who they would have preferred, and they'd all pick Russell.
Red Auerbach, MBA, Management by Auerbach. This is the book. More after this. There is a perception that the Celtics, for all of its progressive measures and having at 1.5 blacks on the court, the first black ever, Duquesne's Chuck Cooper, is still a white man's franchise. Spike Lee, the filmmaker, talked about it, and I asked him, Red, about Larry Bird and the white perception, the perception to say very white-oriented team and franchise in a very white-oriented city. Here's what Spike Lee said.
He's a great ball player. I just feel that him and the Celtics, to me, they represent a lot of times white supremacy. There's no mistake that the Celtics have always been recently the whitest team,
no doubt,
in the league.
Historically, it's chronicled.
And Auerbach, that's what they want. Several times I go up to Boston Garden, and it's like being in Birmingham or Selma during the 1950s. I mean, the hair on my neck standing and the only black people there, the kids selling popcorn, beer, or the players' wives or girlfriends.
Now, he may have overstated it a great deal, but let me talk...
You're not kidding. He does what he does good. He better stick to it.
Let me talk about perception, though. This is not my quotes. These are direct. Paul Silas, one of your favorite players. The Celtics haven't been aware enough in community relations in the black community. Dave Cowens, you not only have racial barriers in Boston, you have ethnic barriers. Everybody is separated too much. Patrick Ewing grew up in Cambridge, became a 76ers fan. Would you agree that the Celtics needed to do, maybe need to do, a better job in terms of getting themselves involved in the inner city?
I think that's totally overstated. We had a policy of playing whoever it took to win, regardless of the religion or the color or whatever. Walter Brown started it. I finished it. I'm still with it.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I got the award at the Jackie Robinson dinner, and Jesse Jackson gave me the award. And I told him, what kind of year did I get the award? I got 8 white players. I said, but I want you to know, you know how I feel. And he said, sure. He understands. One year you got 8 white players, next year you got 4, next year you got 3. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. We're out of time in this segment. We'll come back with some more with Red after this. Got only about 2 minutes left. I want you to look at an old quote. This is about 26 years ago from this man right here, the Pulitzer Prize winner, Jim Murray. You guys used to have a feud. Red Auerbach is a certified genius in the game, largely on the strength of the fact that when the owners said that they could get centers Bill Russell from the St. Louis Hawks for an over-the-hill center and a 20-point forward, Auerbach said yes, or maybe he just nodded his head. Either way, he became the Newt Rockne of basketball. It wasn't easy. He could have said no. He has had the magic of Bob Cousy, the archery accuracy of Bill Sharman, the deft Trajan shticks of Frank Ramsey, and now the overpowering anti-missilery of Bill Russell. Red Auerbach remains the Eric von Stroheim of the cage. He said, a laughing winner is not uncommon in sports, neither is a snarling loser. Red is a snarling winner. I know you've been able to bury the hatchet. You're old friends now, you and Jim Murray. But if you had to define yourself in the final moments for all that has been said and written about Arnold Jacob Auerbach, what would it be?
Well, all I wanted to do was win. We played by the rules. All I wanted to do was win. A lot of times I would do things during a game in preparation for the next game. Mm-hmm. A lot of coaches didn't do that because of TV, as I mentioned before, whatever. I was always ready for the next game, and I always wanted my players to owe me one. That's why in 20 years of active coaching, I fined a total of $5, which I never collected. I never fined a player. I talked to him. So the players were always happy.
938 wins. If you take the words boss, B-O-S-S, and invert it, it's double S-O-B. There are some who say he was a double S-O-B, but he was the boss and is the boss. Red Auerbach. Great seeing you again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
NBA Management by Auerbach is the name of the new book. Wrap things up after this.